Hello. Today I'm going to tell you how to stimulate your orchid in order to encourage it into starting the blooming process. We get a lot of questions from our customers as to why their healthy household orchids do not produce any new flowers but just continue producing leaves. Customers are often very upset because they will buy this orchid with these blooms, but they can't seem to recreate the effect in their home. I'm here to tell you how you can stimulate your orchid into blooming in just a few easy steps. The problem and the reason why your orchids are not blooming is because they exist in a constant climate controlled environment. The lighting is the same, the watering regime is the same, and the temperature in your home is the same. In order for an orchid to start the blooming process, there needs to be some kind of external stress that the orchid would be subject to in its natural environment. As we know, the natural environment does not provide for constant watering, constant lighting, and constant temperature. It is always variable and changing, and this is what the orchid is accustomed to. So the first step in order to stimulate your orchid into blooming is to stop watering it for 5 to 6 weeks. Now, I know this doesn't sound intuitive, and in fact, it sounds a little bit scary and shocking, but the goal here is to precisely do that, is to shock your orchid into thinking that a change is occurring and stimulate the cells and the mechanisms inside the orchid that will help produce and propagate new shoots. So what you're going to do is you're going to stop watering your plant, and rest assured, your plant will still be alive, it will still be healthy, and it will be fully restored at the end of this process. The only difference being now it's going to start producing blooms. So this is step number 1. Stop watering your orchid for 5 to 6 weeks. The second step of this process, again, speaks to mirroring and imitating the external environment that the orchid would be subject to. So we're going to place the orchid in a dark place. Now, you could do this very simply. You can place the orchid in a basement, in a cantina, and also keeping in mind step 3, which I'll discuss shortly. But you're going to move your orchid away from its typically residing spot where it typically sits, windowsill, desk, wherever, and you're going to move it into a dark place. Step 3, you're going to reduce the temperature by 7 to 10 degrees Celsius. Do not reduce the temperature lower than 15 degrees Celsius. Just ensure that you're reducing the physical temperature by 7 to 10 degrees. So, for example, if the standard temperature in your home is 22 degrees Celsius, reduce that and try not to bring it down too far so that you're still maintaining that temperature environment that an orchid would exist in naturally. So it would never be too cold. You will begin to notice that after approximately 5 to 6 weeks, your orchid is going to start looking like this. You're going to see that it looks wilted. It doesn't look too great. It looks like it's weathered. It doesn't look quite healthy. However, again, rest assured, the orchid is still alive and it's still healthy. It's just been put in a state of shock. So if you are to remove the orchid from your pot, you will see that the root systems inside are still very healthy, and you will also see that they've even begun to sprout new root systems. And this is the important part. So whatever it looks like externally will be remedied at the latter portion of this tutorial and this guide. But in the meantime, you have that comfort that it is absolutely healthy. The fifth step is to change the substrate. Your orchid has been existing in this substrate for a very long time. It's likely depleted all the nutrients in the substrate, and people don't turn their minds to the fact that this needs to be changed regularly because the orchid gets so much of its nutrition from the substrate. So I encourage you to change the substrate and also provide some fertilizer for the orchid in order to help, again, encourage that recharging, that shock process, and that regeneration that comes after. So once again, step 6 is to return to normal watering and fertilizing. So whatever fertilizer that you rely on, this is the time to reintroduce it, and this is the time to return to that normal regime of watering and fertilizing. So your orchid has now been put through the state of shock and has been returned to its equilibrium. The last tip is that you have to keep the water warm. I say this in reference to the temperature, of course. You do not want it to be scalding hot, but you want it to be comfortable. So think of comfortable tap water. Approximately 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius is ideal. Once again, you're going to return to watering, return to the normal regime, and place it in your home where it had been placed prior to this entire shock process. So as you see here, I'm watering it in the warm water, and I'm going to return it back to its natural lighting, its natural temperature. And when I say natural, of course, existing temperature within your household. And you're going to return it to that constant state, that equilibrium. In a few months or so, you'll notice you will have new flower shoots. Eventually, your orchid will bloom in approximately a month and a half to 2 months. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck putting this tutorial into use, and leave any questions and comments below.